Good evening, everyone. I want to say thank you very much for visiting us at AIER. My name is Kelly Fox, and I'm a Director of Membership at the American Institute for Economic Research. Great crowd tonight, lots of new faces, lots of old faces, so that's great. Basically, I'll keep it very short and sweet. I just wanted to welcome all of you, and for anybody who is new to the organization, if you'd like more details, I'll be here during break and afterwards that I can answer any questions instead of boring our old-timers with the story. So with that, I think we'll just move it along, and this is Maya.
Great, everyone. This is just so fantastic to see these faces. You know, inevitably about 4 days before each one of these sessions, I have maybe 10 RSVPs on the e-invite, and I said, well, maybe nobody's coming, maybe nobody's interested. And what is significant about this is that you all are here. We're so busy. There's so much going on in our lives. We have a lot of options, a lot of things to do. The fact that we're here to engage with this topic, to take this on, to be together in this way is very significant, and it is very exciting to me, and I think probably to all of us, and that's why we keep coming, is that to support our success, to really support what is it going to take to achieve what we're up for achieving, to participate in our community and in the local community in this level of business, finance, entrepreneurship, making our way in the world and having our work contribute to the world that we want to see and live in for ourselves and our family members and our community and the world at large. I know that we all keep our senses tuned to the larger globe that we're living on. So, fantastic. Couple of logistics. One, when the exchange is, because the series is free for those who are newcomers, the exchange is that on your way out, you give us this survey. And this informs us and helps us understand where we're going and whether we're responding to you and what you liked, what you didn't like, all of that. It's just so useful. So please take the time to fill it out. And then what you do is you'll drop it out at the table on your way out, and you'll get a little packet. And in the packet is a sheet that Joanna gave of some statistics that are very interesting that she'll be going over with us. And then there's 2 write-ups, 2 interesting articles that I thought. One from Harvard Business Review, which is called "What Makes a Team Smarter? More Women," according to the scientific research. And then also "Rebuilding the Economy with Women Entrepreneurs." And of course, that's the whole theme of our evening tonight. So if you can just do that exchange, take a packet and leave your feedback form, that will be awesome. And then December 4th, which is the last session of this fall series, Helena Fruscio is going to be coming. Helena is currently serving as the director of the creative economy of the state of Massachusetts. She's out working with the governor in Boston, and she got that position, I think, because of the extreme success that she generated being the director of Berkshire Creative and participating in Spark and getting all of that going. So she's going to be coming and giving us a rigorous understanding of the extraordinary resources that are available to us as participants in the creative economy. That means artists, entrepreneurs, small business owners, you name it, that's us. And there are, I mean, every time I find out about these resources, I'm blown away that the biggest thing is that we don't even know that they're there for us. So this will help us really get access to all the things that the governor and the pretty brilliant state of Massachusetts is really trying to help strengthen this, us as a community and as people. Okay, so that's that information. We say that knowledge is power. And what does that mean? And in my understanding is that when we embark on finding more about who we are, finding more about ourselves as a larger collective, we get very empowered because we get pulled out of this kind of personal relationship to my life. Oh my gosh, how come I don't want to do that? Or I just really want to create that, make that happen. And when you suddenly get related to the the larger collective that you're part of, the statistics that Joanna is going to be revealing to us, we become aware that we're part of a large emergence, a large movement that's going on all across this country and really around the world. So I'm very excited that we are going to get to know ourselves better tonight with Joanna's presentation. And you know, this idea, this conversation about women entrepreneurs, about women's leadership, about who we are in contributing to the world stage as well as contributing to our local communities, how we're shaping the future, how are we actually doing that, it is a dynamic conversation. Go on to Huffington Post and punch in women leadership entrepreneurs, and you'll be overwhelmed with articles and dialogues, conversations. There's many other blogs and sites that are deeply engaged with this conversation. And so Joanna is one of the leading pioneers in this conversation. She's a journalist who's been taking and gathering much data for us in this area. So I am so pleased, I am so grateful she's driven all the way here. She comes of her just generous self to empower us with this knowledge and this information. So the way the evening is going to go, Joanna's going to present 30 minutes, about 30 minutes of information. And then I'm going to ask Joanna about two, three hot, juicy questions. And then we're going to open it up, and we're all just going to get engaged with your questions, and I'll just kind of take hands, and we'll create a live forum. All right? So with that, Joanna.
Thank you. Thank you. So I'm always freezing, but this looks like a roll up your sleeves kind of crowd. Thank you, Maya. I know a lot of you have been to several of these presentations, but this is my first. So thank you, welcome, and thanks for the invite. Thank you also to Kelly and the Institute for hosting these presentations. I'm excited to be here tonight to talk about what I see as the female advantage in business and what the rise of women-owned businesses can tell us about entrepreneurship across the country. My name is Joanna Krotz. I've been investigating small business with a couple of different hats on over several years. First as a national editor at Time Inc., then as a commentator and advisor for MSN and different Microsoft portals, and then, just to keep me honest, running my own small business, which is a custom content provider both in New York City and also up here. And before I begin, I just thought I might foreshadow some of our discussion by asking one question for a kind of down and dirty poll. Just raise your hands, and I'll give you three choices, and you just tell me which one you agree with. What do you think the primary purpose of a business is? The primary goal of a business. First, is it to provide a worthwhile product or service? Anyone? Oh, you want to hear them all? What a crowd. Okay. To provide a worthwhile product or service, to make money, or to fulfill your individual talent and dreams. So, product or service? All right. So, well, there are a few people who think, you know, if you had to choose, and I'm not going to force you to it, but so think about that. And of course, the business can embrace all those goals, which is what you're all saying. But the real answer is to make money. Because that's what separates having a hobby from having a business is all about. You need to turn a profit. So keep that in mind as we go forward. I'm here to tell you there are a growing body of credentialed research has come up with real differences in the way men and women run businesses. So it makes sense to look into sex-based kinds of decisions and behavior and how that might inform your success. And that's what I'm going to talk about tonight. First, I'll give you an overview of how women-owned businesses are rising across the country. Next, I'll analyze how and why women are moving into the driver's seat with a SWOT analysis that I developed. SWOT, of course, is a traditional way to look at a company's strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats or limitations, SWOT. And we'll see how that goes. And last, I'll offer some tips about how blending sex-based ways of doing business can help you going forward. So first, the overview. It is high time we updated our notion of what an entrepreneur looks, talks, walks, and feels like. Because we still have that popular icon of that young guy in a garage writing code 24/7. But in fact, it's women who are more likely to be starting businesses these days than anywhere else. Women now are estimated to own more than 4 out of 10 of all the privately held firms in the country. That's about 8 million firms, over 40%. The number of women-owned companies has been growing faster than the number of all business startups, with a 54% rise in the number of women-owned companies since the late 1990s. Over the same time, women of color and immigrant women entrepreneurs have been rising even faster. So we have about 2 million firms in the country now, privately held, that are owned by women of color. And in 2010, 20% of all US women business owners were foreign-born, 20%. Those numbers, says an Immigration Policy Institute report, indicate that there is a quiet revolution of immigrant women's business ownership that is organically growing, but going relatively unnoticed in the culture at large. Nationwide, women-owned firms generate $1.3 trillion in annual revenue, and if you add in the services and all the things they buy, we get up to $3 trillion a year that women have an impact, and women-owned businesses have an impact. If you imagine women-owned businesses as their own nation, they'd have the 5th largest GDP, gross domestic product, in the world, or greater than Canada, India, and Vietnam combined. And of course, the last two are fast-growing countries. Women-owned firms will produce more than half, of the nearly 10 million jobs that are forecast to be created by small businesses by the year 2018. And another really intriguing indicator to me of the tilt toward women's entrepreneurship is that patent grants are accelerating for women, which means they're bringing a lot of innovation and value into the economic engine. This ain't Debbie's cookies anymore, right? The biggest jump was in 2010, when nearly 23,000 patents were granted to women, which was a spike of 35% over 2009. Fields that are fast attracting women the fastest, absolutely no surprise. The service sector, which tends always to be more friendly, traditionally, to women as they start businesses and go forward. But in the post-recession climate, it's these women-centric industries, healthcare, education, social services, that are expanding and growing the fastest. So women are poised to be even more nimble and successful in the coming decade. On the flip side, however, which is good to keep in mind, when industries become women-dominated, you tend to have a revenue depression. Think about nursing and teaching, and pricing and profits get squeezed. So some of those challenges are something we'll talk about later. But overall, there's no question that women are gaining status and stature as entrepreneurs. So what's it mean to be a woman entrepreneur, right? We always say entrepreneur and everyone doesn't put male in front of it, but when you talk about women, somehow you have to put that there. And this is where I think the SWOT analysis I developed is helpful. But since we're mapping new territory here, it's all new terrain, I switched it a little bit. So I put the opportunities last because I think women face more threats, more limitations when they start businesses than men. And anyway, I couldn't help myself as an upgraded mnemonic, so we have SWTO, or successful women are taking over. Now let me be clear, nobody is 100% male or female. We all mix it up in style or characteristics. And also being equal has nothing to do with being the same. But what follows are male and female, generally identified repeatedly by research, identified traits. And maybe you'll recognize some of these. So first, women entrepreneurs' strengths. Interestingly, some of women's key strengths come from physiological factors, that is, they're genetic. So research over the past few decades has found that there are real differences between men's brains and women's brains. And men's brains tend to be 10% larger, even allowing for the larger body volume. Women, however, have more nerve cells in parts of their brain than men. And also they have a larger corpus callosum, which is that stem that connects the right and the left hemisphere. And that makes women faster at transferring data between the computational and verbal left side of the brain and the intuitive and visual right side of the brain. Men tend to be more dominated by left side brain skills, analytics, abstract, things like that. And those findings put some science behind a lot of time-honored cliches. For instance, men really don't have to ask for directions. They have the left brain that puts them in a terrain and a context and an environment, and they can kind of see where they are 3D by that left brain skill. And women actually are more intuitive because they're very good at picking up nonverbal cues in an environment, in a context, transferring to the verbal side of the brain and back again, and zoom. They've picked up on what's going on. So women's brains actually work faster than men's brains. Other research comes from economist named Paul Zak at the Center for Neuroeconomic Studies at Claremont University, Graduate University in California. There's some seats up here if you're looking for seats. Zak investigates the hormonal basis of decision-making. So he infuses people with high doses of sex hormones, testosterone, oxytocin, estrogen, and then he has them perform tasks to see how they do. And his findings, quote, women tend to connect better to people and to multitask better. Men tend to be better at a single-minded focus and top-down motivations. Zak also found, by the way, that when he infused people, women as well as men, with high doses of testosterone, everyone became noticeably less willing to share resources. And less generous. I can't make this stuff up, can I? In other research, neuroscientist Joanna Krotz, who's at Cambridge University in England, also is working on the influence of testosterone and what happens in the body when you earn or lose money. And he found that a higher testosterone level seems to generate an inclination toward risk-taking. So when you look at the derivative traders on Wall Street and what happened in the financial meltdown, he hypothesized if women had been there or the men had been older without such levels of testosterone, we might not have gotten into quite the fix that we did. His theory. Those are the nature differences. On the nurture side, typically, and probably most of you have heard this, girls and the women they grow up to be tend to be socialized to be more empathetic, to listen more, to communicate more, all those things. And by the way, those stronger right-left brain connections also mean women tend to have a better advantage in language. You see that in kids at school. The girls are better at language and verbalizing than boys. So women take time to engage. They listen more readily. They're more open-minded about sharing power and information than men tend to be. By contrast, men often are more transactional about their leadership and management and their styles of sharing information. That is, they tend to exchange rewards for results, and they lead through power and control. Women tend to build teams and to lead by consensus. This is on average. How does that translate into benefits for women owners? Let's count the ways. Women tend to ask questions rather than providing answers, which brings innovation and value into projects and discussions. Women's listening skills build relationships, which improve sales and networking. Sharing power encourages teamwork, brainstorming, contributions, which is terrific for small business that has scant skills and needs to leverage every bit of fuel power. And women often start businesses at a personal experience, which brings passion and detailed knowledge of the market and the customer into the startup. For instance, some women I know out on the West Coast, named Romy Taramino and her friend Carla Falcone, were pregnant and suffered from terrible morning sickness at the same time. They found these acupressure wristbands that were out on the market that relieved nausea, whether for chemotherapy or travel sickness or morning sickness. And they were really ugly. So they decided they wanted to launch a business to make these acupressure wristbands vibrant, fashion-forward, better colors. They launched a business called PSI, PSI, in 2007, and they won a dozen different small business awards. And now they're selling these bands in about 6,000 stores across the country, including Whole Foods, CVS, and Toys R Us. Women's social skills further translate into significant online strengths. Recent innovations in local, mobile, and social technologies are actually deepening that engagement. Nowadays, women consumers account for 6 out of 10 of all e-commerce dollars. So if you're selling online, you're selling to women. Also, women tend to use their phones to tweet and to friend 10% more than men do, and they on average send about 30% more text messages every month than men. As social media options become more sophisticated, women are increasingly participating. One recent study found post-recession that fully half of women owners are using social media in their business at a 56% rate. That is, that 56% thought that social media tools were important or very important, and that's up from 4% before the recession. So of course, in addition to these gender-specific strengths, women also bring business vulnerabilities into the arena. And that has, they arise from a host of factors, economic and cultural reasons. That's where women's weaknesses come in. The most significant one is that the overwhelming majority of women businesses are what the US Census Bureau calls non-employer which is they have no staff, they're solopreneur, they're sole practitioners, more than 80%. Next, some of the characteristics that fuel women's strengths also have a downside. Strongly engaged in the day-to-day, passionate about their products and services, women often dive in without enough analysis or investment of what it takes to run the business. They tend to focus on the daily events, and they don't think big or consider long-term. They overlook pricing versus profit margins. They don't think about how much sales they have to generate to cover their nut or their expenses. They don't plan an exit strategy, whether it's an IPO or selling the business or taking on a partner or merging. And many women often do not understand or think about the main purpose of a business, which is mitigating that flaw are the extraordinary transformations of digital tools. So digital tools, of course, have dramatically lowered the barriers to entry for all entrepreneurs, but they're particularly helpful for women. Over the past decade, online resources have given women unparalleled access to peer advisors, competitive research, industry data, and global communities. And that's helpful to all businesses, but particularly for women who don't have a history or a legacy or a clear path to success. There's not a lot of it behind them. So all in all, owners today can be a great deal more nimble, and they can pivot much more easily than in the past because of the digital revolution. And maybe you don't need that business plan quite so rigidly as you used to. You can, change things up much more easily now. Next, women owners have a tendency to think too small. They're frequently risk-averse, preferring to bootstrap than to take on loans. Women hate to be in debt. And they sometimes pass on expansion because of that, expansion opportunities. They often request less money than they need from funders because they anticipate a negative response. They're not so hot at tooting their own horn in their credentials and skills. And one woman owner said to me, "I've learned not to ask for too little because then bankers don't take me seriously." The last widespread weakness for women is their tendency to go it alone, sometimes dubbed the superwoman syndrome. And this is especially characteristic for women with home-based businesses, where the weekday and the workday merge, the family responsibilities, all the kid responsibilities, and the business responsibilities, all the borders get kind of blurred. And one of the key reasons women business owners don't delegate or take time off is a fear of losing control. And that also factors into women owners' discomfort on taking on partners or having some kind of equity investor come in, because they don't want this partner or someone coming in or a high-level staff member to delegate to. They don't want somebody coming in and dictating goals, how to run the business, priorities. So that fear gets them to be at a standstill. And over time, and this is real, women have found that to succeed, they need to make up their own rules because there's not a lot of role model back there. So as a result, they'd say, well, you're telling me you're supposed to do this, but I know better. This is the way I'm running my business. And there's a good deal of truth to that. All of it gets muddled. However, getting over such fears or concerns is essential to grow. Gloria Bohan, for example, launched her walk-in travel agency in 1972 with one employee. Today, with some 1,300 staff in 200 offices worldwide, with $1.3 billion in revenue, the Omega World Travel, which is based in Fairfax, Virginia, is one of the largest and the biggest women-owned businesses in the country. And in looking back on her success, Gloria told me, there's a lot to be said for sharing fears as well as ideas, especially for women. We think we have to do everything ourselves, but asking for help makes people feel involved, makes them feel part of the company. And women can do that very well, too. So that brings us to threats or limitations of women entrepreneurs. And in fact, most of the perils faced by women entrepreneurs come from male perceptions. Women continue to be overlooked and undervalued by the money men, and make no mistake, the overwhelming majority of the investing community and funders are male. While we're starting to see a few women-centric kinds of organizations like this, there's something, for instance, called Golden Seeds in Connecticut, which is a women angel group. There's Springboard Enterprises. Springboard Enterprises have been around for 10 years. That brings VC money for women, but focuses on technology companies. I saw just today there's a Women 2.0 pitch event going on in New York City tomorrow for women with Geraldine Laybourne involved, who's, of course, the founder of Oxygen Media. But by and large, Here we go. Only 15% of the country's angel investors are women, and there are 318,000 of them, 15%. Women make up even less of the VC, the venture capitalist community, only 11%. As a direct result, women's firms do not get startup or next stage mezzanine type funding. Women continue to be seen as newbies, juniors in training by funders, and in turn, therefore, by the public at large. It's a perception issue. The widespread bias is that women don't know how to risk, they're not tough enough, they don't know how to scale. And in addition, to date, women have not developed the key business or social networks that will put them in front of the right person at the right time with the right elevator speech. Elevator speech, a pitch to sell your company to an investor. Since most women owners run not only their businesses but also households and families, there's little time to build those outside networks. And women entrepreneurs really do lack the roadmap, the blueprint, because there's not a lot in front of them to go by. Alongside these external challenges is the fact that women do not necessarily buy into the traditional way of building businesses I alluded to before. For example, a recent survey of professional women, this is now executives, not just owners, found that they believed organizational cultures most value, quote, the person willing to put work before all else, whose time to spend at work is unlimited, and for whom the demands of family, community, and personal life are secondary. So that perception, as we all know, goes double for entrepreneurs who's supposed to be 24/7 intense all the time. But for women entrepreneurs, the idea of work above all else, first of all, they may not agree with it. Second of all, who can afford to do that with family and other responsibilities? So it doesn't happen. And what's the impact of underfunding and undervaluing women's businesses? We're losing at least half of the country's resources and talent, maybe more if you remember that women are now 51% of the population. If we did a better job of funding and valuing women's businesses, we would develop talent, inspire the next generation, broaden the talent pool, and spark innovation. The Global Entrepreneurship Monitor, the GEM project, which is conducted and sponsored by the London School of Business and Babson College outside Boston, does an annual assessment of entrepreneurship worldwide. And they have come up with the fact that if you reduced gender inequities in entrepreneurship, it would increase GDP in the US by a whopping 9%, that's huge, and 13%, remarkable 13% in Europe. So what's to be done? What are the opportunities that arise from the growing numbers of women startups and the distinct flavor that we bring to the party? Perhaps the juiciest prospect on the horizon, granted its early days, are the booming social media innovations known as crowdfunding and crowdsourcing. Crowdfunding, of course, evolved out of the microfinance, lending, and the peer-to-peer kinds of strategies that we saw develop in the third world and have now come to the first world in very sophisticated ways. As one industry consultant put it, crowdfunding is seen by many to be the next development of social media, achieving a deeper level of engagement whereby the crowd not only says they like you, but they are willing to put their money behind you to assist in making it happen. So these appear as putting money where your mouth is. Yeah?
Is that Kickstarter? Is that
That's one kind of crowdfunding. That's one company that does that. It's the most well-known.
Yeah.
As a snapshot of its fast growth, data from 2011 shows that crowdfunding for small businesses has so far racked up 53 million in pledges. Not bad. And of that, 40 million was actually collected, which is even more encouraging. 4 out of every 10 projects of crowdfunding have actually gone forward, and that's pretty significant. Now, obviously, this is evolving social media boom for all entrepreneurs, but it has special benefits and affinities for women, particularly in this climate with the recently passed Federal Jobs Act, which has redefined how startup funding can operate. First, women-owned businesses are overwhelmingly concentrated in the services sector, as we saw, and in cosmetics, fashion, retail, food, and packaged goods. Now, these are businesses that do not scale easily, that do not have big profit margins, and that do not grow fast, all of things investors don't like. But change is definitely looming. The proliferation of new technologies, particularly cloud services, mobile lifestyles, and 24-hour ubiquitous networking, means that we're redefining the way service businesses can operate and grow. The gigundo example, of course, is Facebook, which began as a website and now is desperately trying to reinvent itself as a mobile application. So in the past decade, labor-intensive websites, hardware, devices, widgets have all become commoditized, leveled. And for now, in the foreseeable future, it's content, services, and mobile apps that are key to growth. Today, for the first time really in history, service businesses can grow cost efficiently. And we've seen that women are adept at building the power of social, which means women are poised to be that much more nimble over the next decade. Crowdfunding also gives women owners a way to skip right past the male-dominated investor communities and go straight to the source. Like all digital online tools, it takes away the middleman, which is great for all entrepreneurs, especially women. And of course, crowdsourcing communities further give women entree into the expanding universe of mentoring and networking options. Another timely opportunity for women is the fast-growing trend of the citizen consumer. So more and more companies are discovering that tying their branding to a cause will up their sales and their brand awareness. There's Lowe's, for instance, which supports the National Park System. General Mills backs CARE, which, by the way, is totally women-facing, both on the donor fundraising side and on the global program side. The very first, the original cause marketing campaign was launched by American Express back in the early 1980s, and it was about every time you used your card, a few pennies went to restore the Statue of Liberty. But the competitive advantages of embedding purpose into a purchase have greatly accelerated, especially in the last few years when we've had this really nasty set of corporate scandals, you know, the BP oil spill and the bank meltdown, and global companies are looking to become virtuous, or at least seemingly so. So women are particularly influenced by cause marketing. All consumers are in favor now of cause marketing, but with women that figure spikes to 95%. And overall, the growing reach of being a responsible business will continue to generate benefits for women. A related trend is businesses getting involved in community activities and nonprofit kind of action, and participating in community action and nonprofits is a hallmark of small business, much of women-owned businesses, much more so than male-led companies. So how does all this translate into practical benefits for all entrepreneurs, men as well as women? I think women can learn from men's strengths, and men can learn from women's in what I call gender blenders. So for instance, when it comes to leadership and team building, Kimberly Edelston, who's a professor of entrepreneurship at Northeastern, says, if a man tones down his command and control management style, he can gain deeper trust, greater initiative, and perhaps most importantly, staff who are thinking about how to generate more sales and profits as opposed to how to avoid making mistakes. Women, on the other hand, tend to rely on relationships to motivate, so they often have trouble in imposing exacting standards and benchmarks, and if they can clear that hurdle, they would manage more efficiently. In goals and risk-taking, usually men view business as a competition. Success flows from big hits. Money is the primary yardstick. For women, we've seen they're risk-averse, they value security, and they might even turn down money and pass on expansion, so they need to work on that. For sales and prospecting, the cliche, of course, is that women have soft skills. I love that, soft skill. And they listen better, and they empathize better, and they mirror better, you know, but it takes a lot more than that to nail a sale. So what women do have is the ability and the tendency to ask questions, which means they find out what their customers want, and then they can deliver. Men tend to push information. On the other hand, I've talked to a lot of sales trainers around the country. They say that women get tripped up by lack of confidence, and that if women try and sell like the big boys as opposed to who they are individually and as their own female self, then they run into trouble. So if men would leverage the following strengths: forging relationships, creating teams, making employees feel valued, connecting with customers, listening to vendors and prospects to find out what their needs are, expanding their social media tools, and brand building by infusing purpose into products. And if women made efforts to leverage the strengths of strategic planning, financial analysis, risk-reward decision-making, and access to networks and funders, then all of small business would get a rise, and we'd have much more and better entrepreneurs all around the country. So thanks. I look forward to Maya's little grilling, and I hope to hear your comments and feedback. It was a pleasure to be able to talk to you.
Okay, wow. That was a lot. So I just want to push into two little areas there, and we can kind of open them up and then see where that takes us. So the first one, I'll start with the more provocative one first, which is, and this came up with the flyer as soon as I made the flyer, and I said, what is the female advantage in business? And a man got upset. He said he was well trained by his feminist wife, and he said, but that's just creating another gender bias. Isn't this just women building up their self-esteem, trying to have more confidence, where as good business is just good business, it doesn't have a gender bias to it, and that when we put a gender bias, we're just perpetuating a stereotype that's limiting our participation. So I lob that question over to you.
Well, it's kind of a softball, but first, and I'm happy to answer it, is anyone have a problem with or difficulty or see the point? I mean, it'd be interesting to hear if you see it as, I guess, prejudice to be talking about a female version of business. My reaction is there are all kinds of gender stereotypes, right? There's the man-eating woman, there's the little woman, you know. There's a gender stereotype of the dominant patriarchal man and the mama's boy. I mean, which gender stereotype are we talking about? And also, equal does not mean being the same. So, for instance, women do things differently than men do. And because their chemistry is different, their anatomy is different, their cultural relationships and learning and development are different, and different doesn't mean not equal. And that gets conflated in terrible ways, I think, for so much of what goes on in terms of talking about gender and sex kinds of differences. If someone's good at math, they're equal to someone who's not. And that's about where it comes down to for me. You know, there are differences. It doesn't mean inequality.
Okay, and I'm just going to ask these series, and then we'll see who wants to jump on which one and expand where. So something that I spend a lot of time concerned and interested in is the state of the world and the many crises that we as men and women are facing for the planet. And so one of those concerns is that this sense of driving business is based on a GDP of endless growth and products and more stuff, and how are we actually going to respond to that? How do we earn a living while not contributing to what seems to be an unsustainable practices? And in that, how are women, if they are, bringing innovation to responding to this sustainable future that we all need to be creating together?
It seems to me there's two parts to that. One is you decide you want to get engaged in that part. You don't have to. You can just be a person who wants to build a business, make a lot of profit, you know, put steam out the chimney. You don't have to be that person. Women do tend to be more concerned because they have families and they want their kids to breathe good air, so they are concerned about what comes out of the chimney, and it's a very organic kind of cycle. And as I've seen in the research, women do get engaged in nonprofits and community action. So there's a lot of work that women are doing in making the best products they possibly can, whether it's toothpaste or weaving or technology, you know, software. And that, to me, adds to the better world. If you are working to make the best product you can, whatever it is, you have my admiration. So beyond that, I don't know, does anyone else see an issue where you have to, I don't think you have to be related to cause marketing. It would be nice. But I don't feel like I can impose that on every business. That's an individual choice. I do think it's an economic argument that the more that businesses are sustainable, the more we have food that isn't using up the environment and the resources, the more cattle eat grass as opposed to we feed them grain, you know, we're going to have a better life and a better economy. I think those two are related, but that's my opinion, and I'm not sure I want to impose that on everyone who starts a business.
Right, and not to impose, but just to open up, does anybody want to raise their hand now before I ask another question? Catherine?
I just wanted to say I was able to take some classes in permaculture, and those are scientists and other people actually addressing the sustainability issues, and the ethics are earth care, so care about the earth, people care about people, and resource share, which means try to share whatever resources you have. If you're going somewhere, take somebody with you. pick up somebody's groceries on the way back. And I think women have a talent for this. I have a hunch, especially mothers. And I just offer that on my own, the idea that there are women and there are mothers. And it's not to say, like what you said, different is not equal, or equal's not, you know, it's different to be a mother than a woman. And we should just, again, honor, again, what do mothers know that women might not, just because, you know? And it's, again, not to put them in different elevations of value, just, it is what it is.
Well, I mean, that's tricky, because I think when you have young children, you don't have a lot of time or luxury of getting involved in a lot of other stuff, so you tend to be very inward focused. So, you know, and dads too will be different from men who don't have kids. So I'm not sure the kid alone makes the difference, but certainly it changes your lifestyle. Actually, there's other research, and now we're in another whole silo, and some of you sitting here know this, where women give more than men do as a proportion of their income. I mean, women have less money than men do, so they don't give as much money, but they give a higher percentage than men do. So there you go.
Jenny. Hi.
Hi.
Thanks for that synopsis. It's great.
Thank
I came
you.
here thinking I wasn't at all interested in gender macro view of business, but it's very, very interesting.
Well, that's the best compliment you could pay. So.
So at the end of your talk, you said, and women then can become more skilled in these strengths that men are often better at. Can you enumerate those more slowly and talk about how you really, really can get into those?
Right.
From, I need to go from 0 to 60 pretty quickly.
There's always guys you can talk to.
In a new project, and I don't have any real capital to spend on consultants, so I need to do it alone, at least in the beginning. So I'd love to know what your take is on that.
Well, there are, you know, resources for entrepreneurship which have multiplied exponentially in the last 3 or 4 years, ever since the recession, because everyone wants the small business engine to be revved up, because that's what generates jobs. So it's been a priority of both the White House and private sectors, universities and so on, to help entrepreneurs get on their feet. There's something called Startup America for youngsters. That's for all entrepreneurs, and there's Young Entrepreneur, which is for Gen Y. So there's something called SCORE, which is the Service Corps of Retired Executives, that has branches all across. Because for me to tell you what to do in your business, I don't think is great. I'd rather direct you to free resources, if that's okay. So there's something called SCORE, Service Corps of Retired Executives, where you can go and just talk about what your issues are, and these are people who have been successful executives in business, who will give you information and resources to develop a business plan, to be strategic, and to have a feedback to sounding board. Usually there are at community colleges, and there are a bunch of them in the Berkshires, that have a small business division and an entrepreneurship division. And they have interns, and they have youngsters who will come work for you to gain credit. That's one way to do it. And also they have resources. There's a huge one actually out of Boston, but if that's a little far, I'm sure the Berkshire community has some. MCLA probably has some. And those are connected with SBA, the Small Business Administration. There's usually a private-public partnership. So those are the ways, you know, to begin. And then there's dozens and dozens of online resources. It depends how self-disciplined you are. I mean, you can go to the Microsoft site and download a template for a business plan that kind of walks you through what do you need to do, just like I did on the SWOT analysis. What do you need to know for this? What do you do for that? I mean, you have to fill in the blanks. But there's dozens and dozens and dozens of online resources if you're looking for tutorship or tutorials on strategic planning, on business plans. It just depends what your needs are. I know I overwhelmed you, right?
No, not at all. You've given me 4 great resources. Can you just...
Yeah, it was, right, risk-reward kind of decision-making. So you make a decision based on what you think is coming. Financial strategies, financial planning. Thinking about an exit strategy is, I think, the way I said it. Let me just make sure I cover the ones that I thought through. Financial analysis, access to networks and funders, which is, you know, working on that and investing time in that, and whether it's online or by going to associations within your industry, joining some kind of, going to conferences. I mean, real thoughtful networking, not just showing up at parties, so it's more strategic. So those were the ones. Yeah.
My name is Nancy Schulman.
Hi.
Hi. I'd like to put a plug in for my organization. I work for the Massachusetts Small Business Development Center.
There you go. The SDC.
We're
That's
part
exactly
of
the right.
the MSBDC, and we're part of a national network. We have an office in Pittsfield. There's myself, and there's also a male. We're business advisors.
Shall remain anonymous, apparently.
Keith Gerard. He's actually the head of the center. And what we do is we work with any business, any gender, startup business, or people who are already in business and need some assistance. Either they're growing or they need some financing. We will help you from A to Z with business planning, preparing documentation with you for banks so that hopefully a bank will say yes. We will, help and tell you what it is that a bank is looking for, so that when you do go to the bank, you'll have all your ducks in order. And we're located in Pittsfield. Marketing, absolutely. One of the differences between us and SCORE, not to put down SCORE, is that we are a little bit more diversified in the kinds of businesses.
Also more disciplined, I think.
Probably. We have to indicate also our impact. So we do have results, and the matrices are available. They are printed and publicized throughout. We also, because we're more disciplined, I guess, and a little more diversified, we're also, I guess, I don't know how to put this without sounding like maybe they're not at the same level.
Well, you don't
that we
have to
are.
compare it. I mean, you can probably just
No, but we do some more modern. We do some with the marketing and so forth. We do more online stuff, and we can help you more with social networking and so forth.
Perhaps you could give her a card.
And I have cards if anybody would like them. We also will travel to North County and South County. We cover the entire Berkshires. And I know there's at least one client here. I'm not going to name names, so hopefully it's working.
I have 2 questions for you.
Yes.
Are you saying that your resource is a free resource?
Oh, and they're free and totally confidential.
Great. And out of curiosity, so we can understand who's
Yes.
supporting what, where are you funded from?
We are funded, we're 3-pronged. On the federal level from the SBA, on the state level from the Mass Office of Business Development, and on a regional level from the Eisenberg School of Business with the University of Massachusetts, who's really controls us, or sort of our boss. We report to UMass Eisenberg School of Business. And we all have various degrees in business from...
There are SBDC offices from coast
all
to
over
coast.
the
This is
United
not
States,
just
Puerto Rico, Guam, and the Virgin Islands.
So it's big.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good to hear. Good that you're here.
Okay, who else has a question?
I just don't know what an exit strategy is.
Okay. That's what happens at the end of your business. What's your goal at the end? Are you going to sell it? So do you need to prepare a business because you're going to prepare it for sale? And that's your success? That's your exit? Are you going to go public, an IPO? And so you need to think about how you get to that. Are you going to take on a partner and so grow the business and have an exit from your little enterprise by creating a new and bigger kind of company? Or your success is just to go forward and then you either succeed, someone succeeds, your kid or someone else you sell it to, or you end the business when you stop wanting to do it. That's the exit. But you have to think about what you want to do so you know how to get there and what you should have in place in case that's your goal.
It sounded to me like something you do when you're asked to leave a job and you have an exit interview.
Oh, no.
It's better than that.
Yeah, it's more of a process and planning, as opposed to, I'm not really going to tell you why I'm leaving. Sure.
I was hoping to mention, because you said women are not as confident sometimes asking for things, or even in their elevators. I'm going to be having to leave too, so I just want to stand for a minute and just thank everybody for being here. And I am a Toastmaster, and hopefully everybody knows what that is.
That's a great thing to mention.
It's a public speaking organization, so you can actually stand up, and if you have butterflies, they fly in formation. Because you have to practice and practice. You can actually go for free to any Toastmaster meeting, so you can just Google away and find your local ones. We have a wonderful one right here at Barrington. And then we go to lunch at the co-op afterwards. You can join us for that if you want instead.
It's a nationwide organization whereby you learn how to speak in public. So for presentations and for talking to investors, it's good coaching and training. Thank you for mentioning.
I have some cards here if anybody wants them.
Okay.
Toastmaster cards.
Oh, Toastmaster cards. Okay. Anybody else? Anything? Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.
So, hold on.
Oh.
I have plenty of questions.
Oh. Well, people are getting a little restless, aren't they?
Well, we still have plenty of time, and some people notified us that they needed to leave early, and so that's fine. They'll take care of that. Okay, so one of the things, so you and I had several conversations. They were very rich. And one of the things that I was saying is that I noticed this actually, part of my interest in women's empowerment and entrepreneurship came from noticing the magazines that my husband was getting from Innovator magazine, you know, like where are the innovation, the leading technology, what is the future, where are the startups what are the startups that are being funded? And I kept on noticing there are all these young men who are taking the risks to start something. They have amazing management teams, women rocking it, helping to make it, push it forward. But the risk-taking and some of these brilliant out-of-the-box ideas seem to be, at least what I was seeing in the magazine, seem to be coming from males. So I'm curious, one, is that accurate? Or is that just has to do with where we're getting our information from? In other words, what are we seeing? Two, is that something for us to pay attention to? Is that an area that we should, that as women, we can step into? Because to tie that into, you had responded, you said, well, we women tend to have businesses with things that we want, stuff that we want to buy, and stuff that we want to do is what we tend to make our businesses about. So I'm just interested and curious about this area of driving newer innovation and what you see our role can be in that.
Right. Well, technology gets, you know, it's got all the sex appeal. So, you know, it's the new kid on the, it's what everyone is going to, it scales easily, it doesn't cost a lot to start. Now that things are in the cloud, you don't actually even have to buy software, you know, so it has a lot of sex appeal, and of course that's kind of male-oriented. There is something, you know, for the younger women in the crowd, there's something called the YEC, the Young Entrepreneurship Council, that is working with Gen Y to start businesses that are not about becoming Bill Gates or Mark Zuckerberg. They're just about starting a business to get revenue coming in because there aren't jobs out there for Gen Y, and because it's about find something that will generate income. And that is innovation. You know, find a niche. It doesn't have to be the next Apple or the next garage sale, guy in the garage creating code. The other thing is the Kaufman Foundation, which of course is the biggest nonprofit that handles entrepreneur. Actually, this is Entrepreneurship Week as we speak. I don't know if you knew that. No. November 12th, Obama's, yeah. And Kaufman Foundation has incredible resources on its website and does these worldwide events and events all over in the country on entrepreneurship. And I've talked to someone who has done all these kind of events at Kaufman, and he said, you know, a wonderfully wise thing, which is not everybody is the CEO or the founder at a company. You need a COO. You need a CMO. You need someone who actually is coming up with how to implement. So, you know, it's not just vision that creates companies. It's people sitting alongside that create that platform. And 5 will get you 10 that Zuckerberg had those people, you know, not just the ones suing him, but other people, right? So that's another way to bring innovation is. It's like a mindset where you have to be Lois Lane, but you don't, you know. You can be some other kind of reporter. You can be another kind of superhero. And you have to remember that that's an important thing, too. It's not just about one person at a company. So I hope that answers it. Yeah.
Yeah, I have a question. It's kind of slipped by a little bit, but that most women entrepreneurs are solo shows.
Yeah, solopreneurs.
Solopreneurs. And
sole practitioners.
Yeah, so I find that very interesting because when I first thought of my own business, I wasn't actually thinking of just being a solo person. And then the person that I had in mind, the first one to hire, kind of, once I got to know a little better, I thought, oh God, what a crazy person. I can never deal with that person. So then eventually I realized that I kind of had given up on the idea. I said, I better make myself happen so that I do happen rather than thinking of other people. But now that you brought that up, that all other women are actually thinking the same thing, I'm thinking, oh shit, I don't want to give up on the original plan, because I think that's actually the better plan.
Mm-hmm.
So my question somehow is how to, because obviously that's a weak, yeah, I mean, I trust myself more to get myself from nothing to profit than I trust a bunch of other people.
Mm-hmm.
So how to change that? Because I fundamentally think it's a mindset, because I worked my butt off for another female boss and surely made money for her, and it didn't rip her off. So
it can be done.
So it totally can be done. And I find the idea better to generate something that gives other people work than just to get me from, sandwich to grave and, make a little profit on the way. This is not so great.
So you've answered your own question. You don't let me know who wins the argument.
Yeah, but how do you change?
So you hire someone on a probationary basis, let's work for 3 months. If that doesn't work out, do you actually think there's only one person out there who can help you? And she's crazy?
Yeah, I don't think I'm going to start with her. No, I don't think so.
Right. But the other thing is, women do not like to let go. And someone can be extremely innovative and extremely add great value, and she or he will not behave the way you do. They will not make decisions the way you do. They will not approach things the way you do. And you have to decide somewhere along the line to be the boss, not the peer. And that's another whole transition. When you're a boss, it's not the same thing as being someone's peer or friend. You have to be above. You have to be able to step back and delegate and oversee and feed back, give reviews. That's a whole nother business side, Women don't necessarily like that moment, But you can't be a friend to some. I mean, it's not even friend. You're not on the same level anymore. You have to stop doing stuff. You have to delegate that stuff, and talk about results, and not process.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's right there.
Sure.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So I had a question about, you said something about teamwork, that women are better at that, and so I'm hearing that women are more comfortable being solopreneurs, and I know from my own experience, I'd rather do it myself often.
Yeah.
So, and I just think naturally of men being better at teams, because that's part of their cultural conditioning.
Well, they can be more competitive, or they're socialized probably.
Well, not even competitive, but just to work together on a team, and I think they do understand that more naturally. So I'm just curious why.
Well, I'm talking about management style and innovation. So for instance, if you're some kind of consultant and you're walking into a room, you're going to, as a woman, not you personally, are going to sort of reflect the opinions that are going on around the table. And if you do have staff, you're going to kind of manage through consensus. But nobody is totally one or totally the other. Men like to be the leader. They like to be in charge, and there's always this jockeying. Even though they're used to being teams, they're working on teams. I don't think they want to manage by consensus as much as women like that. Women feel more comfortable. So the word team may be, a bit of a misnomer. Just because there's a bunch of guys on it doesn't mean it's a team. So everyone might have a role, but...
But it sounds like that, like they like having a role. I mean, I know my husband has said he doesn't mind if he's the leader or the follower as long as he knows which it is.
Okay, and you think women don't like that?
I just don't think we're brought up that way.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I
Mm-hmm. Well, there's volleyball players and there's tennis players. I mean, there's also personality in there, so. Sure. Amber?
First, I just really want to thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Standing up there and giving these statistics that, on one hand, are so exciting to see how women are stepping into this arena more bravely, but at the same time, I'm very troubled by what I'm experiencing with women. And when I say I'm troubled, I think it's great that we're seeing this incredible increase in women stepping into this game, but women are suffering also from trying to figure out how to play in a masculine-dominated paradigm. Business is the arena, the domain of the masculine. It's wonderful that we're bringing in these characteristics, these attributes for this innovative time. But at the same time, I keep discovering that women, we keep bumping up against our own inner, deepest, profoundest mindset of wanting to stay invisible, of being, that's the risk-taking part, of not feeling we're qualified, not feeling we deserve great success. I mean, there's a lot of internal mindsets that we bring to the conversation. I'm reminded of a woman, one of my clients right now is a co-founder of a wonderful new enterprise in New York City. And she reached out to me and she said, you know, Amber, if you can help me figure out why is it that the men are going to these business plan competitions, standing up there and giving their pitch. I have done much more work. I've developed my company at a much greater level, and yet I'm terrified. I don't know how to speak about myself in that arena. I'm afraid I'm going to get knocked down or criticized. So for her, it was a confidence piece. And I think that's the kind of piece I'm trying to grapple with. How do we allow ourselves as women to feel that confidence, which is very much of an internal mindset?
I think, I mean, obviously, everything you say has a lot of weight and truth to it. I think you just have to do it. You just have to get rejected and pick yourself up. I mean, that's what happens to the guys. But they are trained, I don't know, this is another whole, you know, nothing happens that has to do with gender that's one factor. It's a host of dozens and dozens and dozens of things. Just like the phrase I used with Maya is it takes a village to raise a CEO. You know, nobody can run a company without all those people in the background, including the spouse giving the parties and making sure the secretary has the right present at the right, you know, all of that. So there is this entire portfolio set up for men. And women have not figured that out yet, and we don't have the role models. The women who go forward are, they take a lot of static. I talk a great deal also in philanthropy about how women do not step forward as role models and givers. You know, the only one we ever hear about is Oprah. I mean, and it's because they don't want to be in the limelight. And there are reasons for that, because they take the women who are seen as powerful, come into a great deal of negative criticism. The bitch, the gold digger, the cranky person. I mean, so it's not easy, but it needs to be done.
We have to support each
Yeah,
other.
let me give a little order because I have a little
I'm sorry.
witness. So this young woman here with the glasses, and then we'll go Amy, Pooja, and then the woman in the back. And who else had their hand over here? Okay.
I just had a quick comment because I was thinking of a really wonderful woman who actually is a tennis player in the Berkshires that I would like to commend. How many people have heard of Jane Iredale?
Well, sure.
All right, yes. Well, see, now she's a tennis player, but she's also a very kind and philanthropic person. She and her husband Bob just opened their home to botanical gardens. So we do have some role models.
Oh, sure.
And so I'm so thankful to hear that she has spoken.
Yes,
But
of course.
it's just wonderful, this collaboration that's going on. So thank you. I just wanted to share that.
And maybe, let me just also, just to tack on to Amber, maybe we'll come back full circle. But the idea, because what I'm hearing is that in my conversations with women, I'm hearing that there's a lot of stress in the working world. And there's a lot of stress happening in society right now. And that even in one of our conversations, you said a lot of women, especially the 30-year-olds, the 25, 30-year-olds, they're like, I'm not into that. I want to be on my laptop on the beach. I'm not into doing whatever that old model is. I want to reinvent it so it works for me and what my proclivities are. So there's a changing of even a work culture. What does that mean? And how do we navigate as we're inventing it and changing, I think, probably to make it more healthy and wholesome for human beings in general.
Well, we are in this, I mean, Laura talks about it, we are in this kind of holding action. So Simmons College outside Boston, which has, I think, the only MBA program for women in the country, does a lot of research around why women are fleeing the corporate world. They get to a certain level and it just takes too much out of them. And so they do something else. They start their own business or they're consultants or so on. And they've been doing this research for 2 decades, you know, because it's just it's just too stressful to be in that not the boardroom, the conference room, you know, or the corner office or whatever. So and the measures of success. I've done a lot of writing about this too. It's a whole different type. The measures of success for women are simply changed. They don't throw people down the stairs when they get promoted. That's what you're supposed to do. You know, all these kind of things that happen in the male world are not things that women like to do or want to do. So they're seen as not tough, which you have to, and they're seen as not I don't know, executive material, and all of it is male definitions, you know? So it's very tough.
Okay, let's go with that order. Here we go.
Yeah, so to build along these threads, I work with young emerging leaders, and one of the things that I'm wondering maybe in your conversations with women entrepreneurs working on different scales is what was provided to them in their formative stages of starting a business or whatever that helped them, that inspired them to go that step, and maybe what as women or what as the greater community can we provide to our fellow women to help them close these gaps that we're seeing still in the workforce.
Wow, that's so broad. I mean, Maya and I talked about generational things, and there are generational differences. I'm not sure I can answer that because I don't think there's one answer. You know, women are not one kind of cohort. I mean, they're not one demographic. They're all different. So some are like the Cybands. They were inspired by having morning sickness, you know, and they wanted to go into fashion. Other people, there are women who just really want to make a ton of dough. And so they have that as their inspiration. The technology, I mean, years ago, I met all these women at Microsoft, and I just thought they had the male model. You know, they all dressed in navy. And there wasn't a lot of female stuff I didn't see a lot of what I call female characteristics around the way they behaved, because that's the way they got ahead. But they all left and started their own businesses. So they learned the skills, and, you know, they had all those stock options. So I don't think there's one answer. I think there are a lot of resources, some of which you heard about, to sit down and talk about that. And women entrepreneurs do like to get together and exchange information and advice, you know. But by the way, the one thing that goes on in the workplace, which I think is fascinating, is that men will talk, not entrepreneurship, but in the corporate world, men will talk about what their salary is. They tell each other how much they earn, which helps when you go in and ask for a raise or you get a new job, you know what the income is. Women will not tell anyone. They won't tell them what they earn and it's less and more private than sex. And so there's, you know, there are not a lot of information for women in the industries about, oh, I see, if you're a chemical engineer and you're working for Dow, this is what you should be earning, because the women don't talk about it. So, which, by the way, keeps salaries down. So I'm all over the lot here. I don't have a real answer for you. I think it really depends.
I think what you said is that women entrepreneurs like to talk to entrepreneurs, and I think it's that us getting together and talking about what we're doing is what is a really big strength.
That's right. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I would say that talking to people and some of your examples highlighted that it comes back to the confidence.
There is this, if you're talking
Each other's confidence.
If you're talking about young women or young men for entrepreneurship, there is this group called the YEC, the Young Entrepreneurship Council. I think they're doing good work. I have a bit of skepticism about them because they like themselves a lot. They're like, we're us and you're not, but they are doing good work. So it's good to look into. The Young Entrepreneurship Council.
How long has that been around? Sorry.
About 3 years.
Yeah, so they're in the learning stage.
No, I mean the guy who runs it is really muscular, and he's in his thinking and his marketing, and he's now got incredible sponsorships, corporate, and he's been to the White House, and they're moving.
I just wanted to make a comment regarding what Amber was saying, and then what you were saying is regarding what it is to be a woman in a higher position in business. As far as when I moved to New York when I was 20 and started working, and I worked in network television. I was working for some high-level executives and women, and they made me tremble. I mean, they were women trying to be men, and they had to blaze the trail then. And I think what we're discussing is now how the pendulum swings. They open the doors for us, but now how do we hold those positions as a woman would hold those positions, and what does that mean? And I guess that's what I'm a small business owner, but what does that mean to be in business as a woman rather than, I'm not trying to be a man, I'm trying to do it my way.
Right, well, the more role models you have, now we know it's okay to wear pantsuits when you're Secretary of State.
Right.
So the more you have those kind of paradigms, then the easier it becomes to say, oh, I see, we can do it that way. But it takes that kind of breakthrough. It takes that effort.
Right, I'm thankful to those who went before,
Right.
but now I think there is that whole balance of finding the new way out.
Yeah, I would agree.
That's great. Pooja.
I mean, to me, that whole thing is really like what the feminist movement had been, and what our role now is as women and men is to really create the landscape and our reality as we want it, not something that's dominated by one gender. But so that's like the most juicy and exciting piece to hear you all talk about. And in addition to that, I just wanted to add that as a young entrepreneur, it's funny that even though you say that, and I believe that women are the least philanthropic, or percentage-wise.
No, actually, they're more philanthropic than men.
Okay,
Yeah.
so, but you said that
Well, women have less money, so by percentage of how much they have, they give more.
Okay.
Whereas men have more total dollars.
There was something about there's only 15% of the country's angel investors are.
Right, but that's someone who invests in a company. That's not philanthropy.
Right. Okay. That helps, because I was going to say that in my mind, and partly it's because I'm a woman and I feel safer and more drawn to asking women, but I think about women.
Yeah.
I think about the women that I want to ask for money, and it's primarily women that have given me money.
Okay.
And that's encouraging to me, so I'm glad that it lines up.
Well, there are now more angel. An angel investor is an individual, yeah, and not a VC, which takes a percentage of your business, and they're all about the profit. They don't necessarily want to help you grow. So it's a different.
I think that's also really exciting. Well, I want there to be more of those for me, and also that I think philanthropy in general is something that is still suppressed for us. Like it's something that I wish that we would encourage. And when I came, the only other one of these I came to was when you shared your vision, Maya, and I loved it, which was, what if the Berkshires was this abundant place of female wealth and philanthropy, where we sponsored each other's businesses, and I mean, that was really exciting to me. Like, if I had a successful business, I would think, how can I help other women?
There is an interesting model for that. There's something called Pipeline in New York City. I don't know if you've heard of it. And it's the woman who started it is, I think she was getting her MBA at Columbia, and she has started this network that's gotten a lot of buzz. And what it is an nonprofit organization that funds women-owned startups and also trains women on the other side of the equation to be angels. So it's a very, it's a terrific thing. And Natalie, right? Yeah. So it's online, and I think it's a great model that can be replicated regionally.
What is it called?
Pipeline. Pipeline.org, I guess.
I just wanted to say that, in fact, we do have in town a Women Entrepreneurs series that was launched. I launched it a few weeks ago, but the whole point, and several of the people are participating in it, but the point of it was to try and find a community right here where women could gather who are already stepping into, they're already entrepreneurs, but they really need the support. We do a whole piece on the vision, the authentic vision that you have, the capacity to shift your mindset and create a success mindset, and then look at some of the metrics like marketing and stuff. So trying to bring the right and left brain together. But women, we really need to support each other in this new vision of what it can be to step into this arena and become successful. And I just want to say that one of the things I'm noticing is that women are not defining a successful company merely by making a profit.
Right.
Money is part of it, absolutely. Sustainable livelihood is the language that I'm hearing a lot of women talk about. But the idea of impacting the community and impacting the planet, the sort of triple bottom line, socially responsible company.
Purpose, people, profits.
People, yeah. Purpose, people, profit. Did you love that? I love that. The 3 Ps. But it's wonderful to see that women are now really taking that on and saying, that is what we're here to do. So, brave work.
Yes, you have.
Just to comment on the discussion that you had with Amber before.
Confidence? Not that again.
Failure, getting back to that. I don't have the statistics. You might have the statistics, but many of the businesses that men start don't succeed. a lot of, you look at some of these really famous and wealthy entrepreneurs out there, it's not necessarily their first business. Many of them have gone through other failures before they got to the point of success. So the message is, if you fail one time or you don't get your financing that one time, doesn't mean you stop.
No, it means you're a serial entrepreneur.
Or a serial trier of entrepreneurship. You pick yourself up and you do, either you do something else or you pursue that business that you love or that you feel will be successful, and you continue to try it because there are many. Do you have those statistics of
No, but most small businesses fail. I mean, the failure rate is way above the success rate.
Some of those people
but
fail,
that's regardless of gender. Yeah. Right. But I don't have that offhand.
Who else has a thought? It's a stream they want to pick up on?
Maybe it is true that women are afraid to fail. Like you had mentioned, we're afraid to ask for the money because we don't want to be rejected, and we're afraid to fail at all because then that would mean that we'd go back 10 steps or something.
But can I just add something? One of the things that I experience in my consulting is that if somebody goes to a bank and the bank rejects them, they think that's it. And I said, well, look at all banks. You know, they're not all the same, and some of them have different criteria, some of them have different priorities, and there's other investment opportunities besides banks to go to.
Well, there is also a tendency for women businesses, and I've reported on this, to go to the bank without all the financial documentation in place, which leads to rejection because it's all about the metrics. So women say, yeah, but I have this fabulous product, and I researched the market, and I know there's a need out there. And they say, really, show me the money. So, yeah.
Eva, and then the woman back here.
Yeah, maybe I have one more bit of experience to share that leads response to Amber a little bit, but in general, I started my own business a year ago, and I found, I'm watching this experience, my emotional experience does not correspond to the excitement of the business.
Do you care to say what kind of business it is?
I teach languages via Skype.
Okay.
And I teach in Europe and in America. Okay. Hoping to teach in China and Brazil soon. I just wanted to throw this in. I think something, and I think it maybe has to do with what you said, we don't have enough role models and we don't have enough blueprints from women who have gone before us. But the amount of fear, anxiety, panic, suicidal, you name it, in relationship to actually this small business moving forward, it doesn't correlate often. And then when something is happening, maybe I do feel, yeah, it's moving forward. But I think there's something we have to get used to at this point of the development of all of us, human race, that we as women might not have an emotional experience that helps us to move forward and take risk and be entrepreneurs. Then we can look back a year later and think, oh, I did all of this, that's amazing. But the feelings, the feeling experience in relationship to risk is, it's not polled right. You know, men see risk and they feel excitement. Woman sees risk and feels anxiety, fear, panic. Right. So it's just good to know. Yeah. Your emotional experience might not relate to the incredible business that you started.
Thank you.
Great.
Yes, first, again, thank you
you're
for sharing
welcome.
your insights and experience for this forum. Quick anecdote. A long time ago, I worked in a particularly stressful position that was in nonprofits, but stressful, and had a director who had some great skills, but he was not a good leader at all. He used to punch the wall and kick things and get very angry. And one time a situation came up and I cried, and I was pulled aside and told how unprofessional that was. And you know, it's about 15 years later and I still get angry when I think about that. I think, oh, now I'm angry, you know. But still, I think that comes up quite a lot. More recently, actually, I overheard someone explaining that at a board meeting, a woman cried when something came up about what was going on with the organization, and they said, she probably won't get that promotion now because you can't do that. Whereas someone else I know at that board meeting had a little temper tantrum, and also I think kicked a chair or something, and no one equated that with being a problem moving forward. So I heard your statistics, and part of me thought, oh, that's so great, women are making their own opportunities, because I immediately thought, well, it's hard to move up, and I'm shocked at my own experiences working for over 20 years, and I could see saying like, we'll make our own models, and yay for us, and I'm so proud. But I also wonder, is there any fear that if there's such a great movement to sort of like a different island, that means that pattern who's powerful in how things have been done up until now will remain the same, and that there won't be that challenge from women within the current system about how things can work. If we all sort of say, well, forget that, we'll be creative and create our own businesses. Is there any fear about that?
You mean that women do not enter the mainstream of corporate and nonprofit? Is that what you mean? They're not part of big organizations?
So I'm saying, looking at the statistics of how many women are starting their own businesses,
right,
and minorities and younger women and what have you, is there any concern that will also then translate as fewer women going into what's
in larger and global organizations? No, I don't think so. I really don't.
It took me so long to ask. I'm glad.
What happens again in the larger workforce, and this is true for nonprofits as well as for-profit corporations. If you get one woman sitting at the boardroom table or at the conference room table, she's not listened to. She's a minority, right? If you get two women, everyone in the room thinks there's a cabal. They're in cahoots. It's now a conspiracy. You get three women, and they start speaking with an individual voice. They get seen more as individuals. So you have to reach that 33% threshold before you speak as an individual and you're not seen totally as a girl.
Amy?
I just wanted to bring up that behavior of punching walls, because I've had bosses like that too, isn't acceptable whatever sex you are.
Right.
I mean, and that's the other thing, anyway, that's all I have to say. Yeah.
Well, that's another version of the male model, judging behavior, that if you do that, you're tough. But I don't think most organizations let people get away with that, whoever they are, frankly, wherever that was.
We're getting close to when we're going to end, but why don't I ask you this question, see whether it opens up a little bit more. So, I just recently watched Half the Sky. It's an extraordinary film, a documentary. I recommend every woman and man across the planet watch this film. And I was very taken with consistent reporting sprinkled throughout each of these places where the documentary traveled, that either the oppression, the subjugation of the women was because of economic incentive to do that, to continue old practices because there's an economic incentive. And then also that one of the biggest ways that they can create social change and strengthening of society was through empowering the women to become entrepreneurs, to have money. And so I know you've done a lot of work around women and wealth in general, and I'm interested because part of the series is founded on the premise, well, if that works for people we want to be abundant and wealthy here too, because that's going to support a flourishment of Renaissance in wherever we happen to be living, right? So can you talk to us a little bit about what happens when women have wealth? And, obviously we all want to be creating our wealth. And so
right. So a few things about women in giving this is another whole talk, but have some resonance with what we're talking about. What they're talking about is third world countries where girls get married at 13 and have kids, and they go through obstetric fistula because they can't give birth, and this is what Half the Sky kind of covers. They get holes in their body because they can't bring a full-term baby to term. And if you educated a girl, she would grow up healthier. She would marry someone more of a peer. They would have healthier kids. So every dollar you give to girls' education, in that situation is $3 and $4 better for the GDP of that country and for the economic engine. It's a real economic argument in addition to a moral and ethical one. In this country, you know, some of that holds. The more education, we know this, if you get educated, you have a better opportunity in life, period. And we know that girls sometimes drop out more easily than boys, although I don't have any real study on that. I don't know if that's true or not. What happens with women in wealth is part of that power equation that I believe is that when you have a woman standing in the limelight saying, I'm going to give away money, she is a target. She's a target for a lot of negative publicity. Look at what happened to Teresa Hines, right? So there she was running with John Kerry some years ago, and the opprobrium that got directed at her, you know, was incredible because she's independently wealthy. And I think mostly, you know. And also she had an independent mouth, and there was that. So you stand in the limelight, and there's no real model for a woman who has a lot of wealth and a lot of power. I mean, who is it who we can think of? There's conferred power. There's Melinda Gates. There's Hillary Clinton. All of that was reflected power from the White House. I thought it was really interesting. As a senator, she kind of that was her own platform and her own voice. So when women have wealth, a lot of it is generational. When it comes from the World War II generation, the older generation, women worry about the kids, they worry about succession, they don't feel it's their own. Boomer women are different. They're earning their own money, they're stewarding their own portfolios. They tend to give to social causes more than men. And I think if we go forward, and if Gen Y could ever get jobs and make money, we would continue on that track. Right now, it's pretty tough. So I don't know if this is where you go. I think Half the Sky really does not deal with Western civilization. You know, that's not their mandate, that's not their culture, that's not what Christoph or Wu didn't care about. They're just focused on the third world. And it's a very different equation here, I think, because we have different values and we're that far further, if you say, along on the continuum. But it is absolutely true that when you fund a girl, you know, fund an organization that educates a girl, you are funding humanity and you're funding an economic engine. So, Becky?
I think there's another, something else arises in Half the Sky that pertains to both here and to third world countries. And I think it's the thought that teaching girls and women to speak up.
Mm-hmm.
So looking at, you know, in my own experience, speaking up is one of the most difficult things that I've learned to do or I'm learning to do. And it's most empowering. So if you look at Half the Sky, when the girls and the young women are speaking up, they're very much empowered. And so learning how to speak, if you look gender-wise, past generations, learning how to speak was very difficult, and it's difficult for us to learn how to speak. So recognizing how to speak assertively without becoming aggressive. So as women, learning how to speak up and do that assertively without becoming aggressive is, I think, the task at hand.
And giving girls those tools, for sure. Absolutely. But you know, in those countries, they speak up and they get killed. We speak up and we feel bad. It's like...
Yes, but they're, yeah. And some of them speak up and they're willing to, you know, they're recognize, oh, this is part of what's happening.
Well, the girl in Pakistan.
Right.
Yeah.
The girl in Pakistan and some of the girls that were in the film.
It's extraordinary. And the will and the spirit of those girls, it knocks my socks off. They're amazing. Yeah.
Any last thought? Any last question?
Thank you all. Oh, one more. Sorry.
Yeah, hi. I'm just curious what you would say to somebody who has a chance to work teaching women in leadership within a multinational corporation, with a company that is advocating for eradicating the top-down business model. It's a proposal development I'm working on with someone who approached me, and I think it's a very curious opportunity.
I'm having trouble hearing. Say it again.
All of it?
No, the last sentence or two.
It's just an opportunity that I'm curious about developing. I've been approached to do this, and within a multinational company who's advocating for putting more women in leadership and trying to eradicate a top-down business model, and to think about what women in those positions might need. You know, we've touched on a lot of the topics.
So this is not entrepreneurship. This is just business. Is this all based in the U.S. or is it around the world?
Around the world, but most of it's in the U.S.
Because It's very broad what you're asking, and I don't have the details, but the first thing I would suggest is you make sure you have top-down buy-in. You have buy-in at the top, because organizations do not change unless, I mean, they can hire all the change agents they want, and it looks really good. It depends also, I mean, if it's a great gig, take it, you know, no question. But if it's about the change in the organization, it only changes, and women only rise when there's top buy-in, when the people who run the company are really committed to it. Because
according to their PR, they are.
Uh-huh.
So I'm just curious to see where it's going to go.
Do you get to have any kind of meeting with those people?
People who meet with those people.
Yeah. I'm not sure quite what you're asking. Are you worried that you won't be able to accomplish what you want?
No, I'm just curious about, you know, the scale of the opportunity and what would really be effective for women within that corporate model. It seems like there's only so many choices, but at the same time, they're advocating for real, change within the whole business model. And I think it's, you know, if they really want to carry the torch for a different kind of corporation as their PR is promoting, I'm just curious from all of these, feminine minds and leaders and people who have a pulse on the corporate world, what that could actually potentially be.
I'm trying to remember. I had a meeting about a year ago with a woman who started a coaching business for doing just that. In other words, changing the complexion and culture of an organization so it was more female-friendly and female-centric for leadership. And she had developed this whole, she's from Portugal, and she had developed this whole thing that was based on, it was like based on tarot cards. But it was much more rigorous than it sounds. And she would go into offices, and everyone was wowed by this. I can dig up her name if you want to hear it.
It would have been on archetypes, I would think, just on, you would be looking
Archetypes, yeah, but it was a little more nuanced than that and a little more, business-oriented, but yes, of course. So if that, but what occurred to me as you're talking is to go in and actually change the language of the way leadership is taught, and that's what, change. You can't just go in there and say, okay, now we're going to become more professor, whatever, and that would be my suggestion, to try and remake the definitions of leadership as opposed to try and infuse what is called leadership into. I hope that helps.
Yes, thanks.
Great. Yeah.
And I just had a quick question for Maya, because this is my first time to visit this evening. I'm Catherine Voss, and I'm from Stockbridge, Massachusetts, and I'm trained as an educator. I have a Master's of Science in Education. And I took off the last 2 years of public education to start a sustainable organic farm by the Botanical Gardens, and have been trying to understand how entrepreneurship works, how business works, and manage these things, just so you know a little of my background. My challenging question to you is tonight, I live 3 miles from Viva and 3 miles from Rouge. And if 2,000 women were willing to invest $50 a year, which is half the cost of a family's dinner at either of those restaurants, we'd have $100,000 to give Pooja. Thanks for picking me. I'm serious. I'm really very serious about this, because what is she then going to do with that $100,000? How is it going to affect the rest of us in the community? And what are we really doing? Is there a group that's doing something like this that can help those of us who are trying to pull these things together? And ironically, my mission statement is educating members in life, farming, and creative art skills. I've been working the last 2 years on farming and creative art skills. And I just recently came to a financial literacy class here. And I've joined New England Financial Group, and I've gone to East Long Meadow with them, which a navy blue suit. I actually had my buck boots on right now, and came through the doorway with a sweater on. I got a baby that's a caramel, but that's not the tiny aside. But in the financial group that I was dealing with, one of the men made a very derogatory comment. I am studying to be a financial advisor. So I'm going to move in with 2 other women in the financial advisor things. And I made a comment about all of the other staff members in their organization that I had been introduced to were women that interviewed me. I had 5 hours worth of interviews. And they said, oh yes, but they're just office staff. And I just wanted to say, would you like to step outside? And I find myself in a very interesting position, and I just commend everyone here for what you're doing and what you're giving us the voice to accomplish here in the Berkshires. Thank you. Thank you.
Well, so I'll just respond to that since you said it was a challenge, and I love challenges. You brought up consumerism and how we choose to spend our money and the power of that. And then also the power of the collective rather than the individual. And what does it take to come together and start to do things as a body? And how do you then influence that much more vast social change at that level, right? And so actually, the fact that you have brought this up in this space to me is so satisfying, because it's been maybe 9 months of stewarding something along so that this could emerge in the space, and everybody kind of nod their head. So, so I think that there's you know, an evolution at play here, and that we get to steward it along. How and where do we want to? How much do we want to play with this, basically, in our local area? And the thing that I shared, maybe it was at the very first one, which was last March, to Pooja, was that my inspiration for starting this was, well, how do we demonstrate Renaissance? How do we demonstrate a true flourishment that can be an example to other places on the planet? How do we, to do that, we actually have to act locally. And it's wonderful to have a global sense and be informed by the globe. But to actually do that right where you live is the most real, implicating place to do that. So there's been a lot of talk over these last couple months. We want to get together in circles. We want to support each other as entrepreneurs. Oh, what do we want to jumpstart? What kind of giving circles do we want to create? How do we want to fund what we want to see happen here at the local level? So, and that including our own flourishment and our lives and our families and the things that we're responsible for. So, thank you for your challenge. Joanna.
Thank you.
So, really, she came all the way from New York City.
No, I have a house up here.
Well, still, I know you ordinarily be in the city, but this is just.
It's a pleasure. Really.
Well, and you've lit a spark. You've sparked something here. We're.
Let me tell you about one more model based on this comment, which is a nonprofit. So it can be put to service for-profit or social entrepreneurship. The Washington Women's Foundation in Seattle, there are two, so I always get the names a little confused. So it was started by a woman named Colleen Willoughby, who's now like chairwoman emeritus. But the model is, she started in like nonprofit in universities and United Way, and she's probably 80-something now. And her instinct was that women have a lot of resources that were not going into nonprofit, into causes and into social change. So she came up and she said the reason that women don't give is because they haven't got the time. They have kids, they have households, so we need to have a cafeteria menu. So that if you want to just get the Jell-O, you can do that. If you want the whole meal, you can do that. And that was the way to make it more flexible. And she created this model of a foundation where women give, they agreed to give like $2,000 a year, I think it's still that, for a period of years, 3 years, 4 years. So there is some flow, there is some commitment. And out of that money, something like $300 is earmarked for education about giving. So there's no money that goes to administration. They finally ended up getting an endowment that someone donated, so there's some, you can pay for the light bulbs. Nobody ever wants to pay for the light bulbs. But the program was about education for being a smart, strategic philanthropist. And then the rest of it was, they vote on every year by consensus. It must be a 501c3, so it's got to be a kind of established nonprofit. But the whole, one woman, one vote, no matter who's on which committee, no matter what they do in the year, they all vote, and then the money is donated to whatever the women vote on. And it's just an interesting way to do. Linda Gates is actually a member of this foundation. And then donors give a lot more as well, because there are some wealthy women out there. But it's very egalitarian, it's very women-friendly, and the whole part about the education piece is that we will actually pay to bring in people to teach us how to get financial strategies, how to do smart giving, whatever. And Actually, it's now being replicated in different places. Colleen has gone around the country and also to China. There's one in North Carolina, so on like that, that is replicating this model. It sounds very simple, doesn't it? But it takes a bunch of organization, and you have to actually get some women who want to be active. So there's a committee for this and a committee for that, and you do find people who will volunteer.
So great. And before you go, and maybe we'll say one more thing. I see somebody has their hand. But just to remember, so in 3 weeks, December 4th, Helena Fruscio will come, and just, as soon as Joanna was saying, there's SCORE, there's da-da-da, we're all like, wow, I had no idea that even existed, right? So Helena is going to come with a massive amount of resources and to introduce us again to what's available right here in the Berkshires and throughout the state to support our success. Like you said, it's in the interest at a national level to support the success. So finding out about it is the key. And to fill out your feedback form. And you had one last thing?
A real quick comment that when you were mentioning that model, it reminded me of another potential model that this group might want to think about. Many years ago, I was a member of a financial investment group, and I think there were a lot of women groups that started, or maybe 25 years ago or something, started, there was a famous book out about...
You mean the investment club, the women's investment?
Right. So,
oh my God, the Beardstown Ladies you're talking about?
Yes.
Okay, that was, you know that was a fake. That ended up, not the investor group, but the Beardstown Ladies made up their results.
Oh,
that book.
But they actually did have an investment group.
Well, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to step on your story, but...
No, that's good to know.
There are investment clubs around the country that are run by the National Association of Investment Clubs. The Beardstown Ladies.
I was a member of one in the town that I lived in, which was not in Massachusetts. And we would meet, I think it was weekly, and we would all invest X amount of money, and somebody each week would give another presentation on a stock, and we would vote on whether or not we wanted to invest in that stock, and if so, how much. I'm just saying that may be a model for something like this, where people make presentations about their businesses, and there's a dues that people pay every week that can go toward...
Well, like giving circles. Yeah.
It's just another model.
Absolutely. Thank you very much.